The Pacific sky was a canvas of moonlight and haze, painted with the faint silhouettes of Japanese bombers returning from raids over American positions. For decades, the Japanese Imperial Navy had relied on speed, coordination, and sheer numbers to dominate the night sky. Yet, on this fateful evening in 1944, all their calculations, all their confidence, would falter. They did not know that hidden in the shadows above, a predator unlike any they had faced was already hunting them. The P-61 Black Widow, the United States' first purpose-built night fighter, glided silently above the clouds. Its sleek fuselage, twin engines, and radar-equipped nose made it an almost spectral presence. To the untrained eye, it was simply another silhouette in the night sky. But to those who understood its capabilities, it was a machine designed to shock, to terrify, and to dominate the darkness. Captain William Bill Hardwick, a decorated pilot with nerves of steel, adjusted the controls as the aircraft hummed at cruising speed, nearly 320 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. He had flown countless missions over Europe and the Pacific, but tonight, he felt the tension that bordered on premonition. His crew, radar operator Lieutenant James, Jimmy, Collier, scanned the glowing dials, eyes darting from the radar screen to the night sky. "What's on the scope, Jimmy?" Hardwick asked, voice low but firm. "Multiple contacts, sir, heading straight for the American supply fleet. Could be 4 bombers, maybe more," Collier replied, adjusting the radar's sensitivity. The P-61's armament, for 20mm cannons and 4.50 caliber machine guns, were more than adequate to dismantle a single bomber. But what Hardwick and Collier didn't know was that tonight's mission would see their aircraft achieve what many would later call unbelievable. The Japanese bombers, sleek and organized, had never been designed to evade a predator like the Black Widow. And as Hardwick banked the plane silently in the clouds, the crew felt the pulse of history quicken around them. Far below, aboard a Japanese command ship anchored near the Mariana Islands, Admiral Kenji Sato studied the radar screens, oblivious to the approaching threat. His fingers tapped nervously on the table. Intelligence had suggested night raids would be harassed by small American patrols, but nothing of this magnitude. "4 bombers in formation, our fighters will intercept. There is nothing to fear," he murmured to himself. Yet even as he said it, a subtle unease crept into the room, a chill that would soon become dread. The Black Widow closed in. Its radar locked onto the first bomber, then the second, tracing a precise path invisible to human eyes. Bill Hardwick whispered to himself, "Let's show them what nightmares look like." At that moment, the Japanese crews, still confident in their defensive formations, began to sense a disturbance. Instruments flickered, a faint shadow crossed the moonlit horizon, and an inexplicable chill ran through the air. Somewhere in the darkness, a predator was waiting, and it was unlike anything they had ever faced. By the time the first engagement began, no one on either side fully understood what was about to unfold. One plane, the P-61 Black Widow, was about to hunt 4 bombers, and in the hours that followed, it would leave the Japanese stunned, horrified, and forever questioning the supremacy of their once feared night operations. And as the Black Widow descended silently into the darkness, the calm before the storm was broken only by a whisper of the engines, a sound that would soon be etched into history. The first shots are fired, and the Japanese are shocked by the unexpected precision of a single night fighter. The night over the Pacific was alive with an uneasy calm. The silver moon hung low, casting pale light across the endless ocean and illuminating the silhouettes of 4 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, returning from a raid on American positions. The Japanese pilots, confident in their skill and formation, believed the darkness would shield them from any threat. But above the clouds, hidden in the black expanse, a predator was already moving. Captain William Bill Hardwick adjusted the controls of his P-61 Black Widow. The aircraft hummed like a living engine, the twin R-2800s propelling it silently across the sky at nearly 320 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. The radar operator, Lieutenant James, Jimmy, Collier, leaned over the glowing dials, tracing the faint blips that represented the bombers below. Each blip was a heartbeat, each heartbeat a potential kill. For targets, sir. Space roughly 2 miles apart. Collier whispered, eyes narrowing. Hardwick's jaw tightened. All right, Jimmy, let's make this a night they won't forget. The Black Widow glided along the cloud cover, invisible to the naked eye. Its radar scanned continuously, calculating speed, altitude, and trajectory, silently plotting an approach that would confound the enemy. The first bomber, oblivious to the danger above, carried on its course. Then the P-61 dropped from the clouds, engines whispering rather than roaring. The 20mm cannons fired in precise, controlled bursts. The lead bomber's port engine erupted in flame, trailing black smoke as it veered sharply. The Japanese pilot wrestled with the controls, stunned, as the machine's engineering, its defensive formations, its tight flight patterns, was rendered useless in the face of an unseen adversary. First target down, Collier murmured, awe in his voice. The second bomber attempted evasive action, banking sharply and trying to break formation. But the Black Widow's radar-guided approach was instantaneous, surgical. The cannons ripped through the fuselage, and the bomber descended in a cascade of fire, leaving a trail of smoke illuminated by moonlight. The Japanese crews, trained to anticipate threats, were utterly bewildered. One pilot shouted over the radio, voice trembling. What is attacking us? On a command ship anchored near the Mariana Islands, Admiral Kenji Sato's confidence evaporated. Radar operators frantically pointed to the blips, shaking their heads. Sir, 3 bombers have been destroyed, and no enemy fighter is visible on the scopes. An officer stammered. Sato's face hardened, but beneath the stern expression, unease gnawed. The doctrine of coordinated defense, of formation superiority, was unraveling before his eyes. The third bomber, desperate to escape, veered away from the formation. The P-61 anticipated every maneuver. It swooped silently through the clouds, unleashing another calculated burst. Flames licked the night sky as the bomber was disabled, spinning helplessly toward the ocean below. The Japanese pilot's panic was palpable. Formation integrity, once their greatest strength, had become a vulnerability. Fear rippled through the squadron. Sir, it's hunting them like a predator, Collier breathed, gripping the radar console. One plane, it's taking all 4. The Japanese airmen were frozen in disbelief. They could see the destruction, yet they could not identify the attacker. Radios crackled with frantic calls, instruments flashed warnings, but no fighter appeared on their radar scopes. The P-61's ghostly silhouette was swallowed by the clouds, moving faster than human perception, striking with terrifying efficiency. On the command ship, the panic escalated. Sato barked orders, but confusion reigned. Get visual! Scramble interceptors! Anything! The junior officers struggled to respond. The radar screens blinked, but no enemy formation materialized. How could one plane, one single aircraft, dismantle nearly an entire bomber formation before reinforcements could arrive? The concept was unthinkable. Their entire night fighting strategy was being undone by an adversary they could not see. Meanwhile, Hardwick maintained his cold precision. The P-61's radar guided every maneuver, every firing solution. The fourth bomber, the last of the formation, was now in sight. Its crew, witnessing the destruction of their comrades, were gripped by terror. One navigator dropped his hands from the controls, muttering a silent prayer. Engines roared as the pilot attempted desperate evasive action, but the P-61 had already calculated his trajectory. The Black Widow descended like a shadow from the clouds. Its guns unleashed controlled devastation, striking the bomber's fuselage. Smoke poured from the damaged wings, and the aircraft began a slow, inevitable spiral downward. Overhead, the Black Widow hovered, surveying the aftermath. In less than 70 minutes, 4 bombers had been hunted, disabled, or destroyed by a single night fighter. Japanese pilots could not comprehend it. On the command ship, radar crews were baffled, engineers perplexed, and officers frozen in disbelief. Impossible, muttered a lieutenant, staring at the blank radar screens. How could one plane do all this? The psychological shock rippled through the fleet. Entire strategies and doctrines were now questioned, morale shaken by the simple, terrifying fact that a single P-61 could hunt 4 bombers in less than an hour, moving through the night with ghostly precision. Back in the sky, the Black Widow disappeared into the clouds, engines whispering, leaving behind a trail of destruction and astonishment. The Japanese forces below could only watch, horrified and bewildered. The event would be talked about for months, whispered in tense conversations among pilots and commanders alike. The image of one plane dismantling a squadron, unseen, untraceable, was burned into memory. In that night sky, a legend was born. A single P-61 Black Widow had demonstrated that precision, technology, and a fearless crew could redefine aerial combat. And for the Japanese, the terror was not only in what they had lost, it was in the unimaginable realization that such a predator could strike again, silently, from the shadows, leaving no trace but devastation. The night over the Mariana Islands was no longer quiet, it had become a theater of terror. The sea below shimmered faintly under the moonlight, reflecting the flames of destroyed bombers, while far above, the P-61 Black Widow moved like a shadow with purpose. Captain Hardwick and Lieutenant Collier had already claimed 3 bombers within the first hour, but what was about to unfold would become a legend whispered in fear across the Pacific. Radar blips danced on Collier's screen, subtle arcs that traced the remaining bombers' desperate evasive maneuvers. The last Mitsubishi G4M was limping, one engine smoking, wings torn, yet it still attempted to maintain course. Its crew, shaken by the annihilation of their comrades, were oblivious to the silent hunter above. To them, the night had become an impossible nightmare. "Hold steady, Jimmy," Hardwick murmured, fingers brushing the throttle. "We're not done yet." The Black Widow descended through the clouds with ghostly precision. Its twin engines, capable of 3,000 horsepower each, gave it unmatched speed and altitude for a night fighter. Hardwick adjusted the stabilizers, letting the aircraft glide like a shadow along the bomber's path. Every calculation, every maneuver, was exact. The P-61 was a predator in a realm where its prey had no chance to understand or respond. Then, at precisely the right moment, the P-61 struck. The cannons roared in controlled fury, tearing into the bomber's fuselage. Sparks erupted from the wings, and flames roared as the aircraft began a slow, spiraling descent. The navigator's face turned ashen. He had seen death but never with such inevitability. It's impossible," he gasped, gripping the controls. The psychological effect was immediate. On board the remaining Japanese bomber formations, whispers of disbelief filled the radios. Pilots hesitated, unsure if they were being targeted or hallucinating. One officer stammered over the airwaves. Where is it? How can one plane, take down 4 bombers in 70 minutes? Above them, the Black Widow executed its final maneuver with flawless precision. Collier guided Hardwick's attack path, ensuring the bomber could not escape. The P-61's radar-guided systems, combined with its firepower, made human error almost impossible. The final burst of cannon fire ripped through the damaged tail section, sending the aircraft into a tumbling inferno. The pilot's last desperate attempts to regain control were futile. Flames licked across the fuselage as it plummeted toward the ocean below, a silent monument to the lethality of the Black Widow. Below, the Japanese command was in chaos. Admiral Sato and his staff stared at the radar screens, disbelief etched into every line of their faces. "How can one plane? No, this is a phantom. It cannot exist!" an aide shouted. Engineers pored over the radar readings, frantically recalibrating, trying to detect the impossible aircraft, but it was gone. Their instruments, once reliable, now seemed to mock them with silence. Pilots who had survived the attack reported seeing nothing but fleeting shadows, glimpses of a machine that appeared and disappeared with supernatural timing. They described it as a ghost in the clouds, a demon hunting in silence, and the legend of the Black Widow began to take hold. Even the most experienced Japanese aviators, veterans of countless night missions, could not comprehend what had happened. Formation tactics, early warning systems, and even instinct were rendered meaningless in the face of a single, technologically superior predator. Back in the sky, Hardwick and Collier remained composed, almost eerily calm. They had just completed a feat that would echo throughout the annals of aerial combat. 4 bombers had been hunted and destroyed within 70 minutes, each engagement executed with flawless precision, each maneuver a testament to their training, their courage, and the capabilities of the P-61. Collier exhaled slowly, eyes still scanning the radar. "Captain, they won't believe this when we land." Hardwick's jaw tightened. "They won't have time to believe. They'll just have to survive the memory of it." The Japanese were left to grapple with the unthinkable. Radar crews questioned every assumption. Pilots whispered about ghostly attackers. Commanders realized that doctrines centuries in the making were suddenly obsolete. Fear replaced confidence. Doubt replaced strategy. Entire squadrons reeled from the realization that one P-61 could dismantle formations with precision, patience, and lethal efficiency. In the minutes following the attack, the Black Widow retreated into the cloud cover, leaving behind only the wreckage of the bombers and the stunned silence of enemy forces. Smoke drifted across the water, twisted into grotesque shapes by the wind, a testament to the night's devastation. On board the Japanese command ship, no one spoke. The officers simply stared at the horizon, grappling with the truth they could not articulate. One plane, invisible in the darkness, had rewritten the rules of aerial combat in a single, terrifying mission. For the Japanese pilots who survived, it was a moment that would haunt every subsequent mission. For the engineers and radar operators, it was a puzzle without an answer. And for Hardwick and Collier, it was simply another night in which skill, technology, and courage had combined to perform the unthinkable, a feat so shocking that even the enemy could not fathom it. In the aftermath of the P-61 Black Widow's relentless strike, the Japanese command structure teetered on the edge of disbelief. On board the flagship near the Mariana Islands, Admiral Kenji Sato stood rigid, his eyes fixed on the radar displays that had failed him when he needed them most. 4 bombers obliterated within 70 minutes by a single aircraft, a concept so impossible it defied comprehension. He pressed his fist to his desk, the wood creaking beneath his grip. "Impossible," he muttered, voice tight with fury and fear. "There is no way one plane could." A young radar operator, shaking, pointed to the console. "Sir, there were blips, but nothing solid. The readings disappeared each time we tried to lock onto it." Sato's face paled. Every radar operator in the room had been trained to track enemy aircraft with precision, to anticipate formations, to warn pilots of impending attacks. Yet here, their instruments had betrayed them. A single P-61 had rendered advanced technology useless. The crew could not fathom how an aircraft, invisible to both sight and radar for most of its deadly run, had torn through a formation that should have been well defended. Below decks, engineers pored over schematics and reports. "We've accounted for every American aircraft in the area," one muttered, voice trembling. "There is no plane that should be capable of what we just witnessed." Calculations were checked and rechecked, but every combination failed. Their understanding of aircraft speed, maneuverability, and firepower had been shattered. One engineer, hands shaking as he scrawled numbers onto a sheet, whispered to a colleague, "It's like it was a ghost." Japanese pilots who had survived the mission were now scattered across radio channels, each recounting the same impossible sequence of events. It appeared out of nowhere," one stammered. "One plane, just one, took down 3 of my squadron in minutes. I didn't even see it. I couldn't." Another voice interrupted, harsh and panicked. "Our tactics, all our formations, useless. Every move, every precaution, it rendered them meaningless." The fear was contagious. Pilots who had once prided themselves on bravery now hesitated to fly night missions, haunted by the memory of a predator they could neither see nor anticipate. Even veterans, seasoned in countless battles, admitted quietly to one another that they had never encountered anything like this. "It wasn't a machine," one whispered. "It was something else. Something that hunts in the dark." Back on the command ship, Sato convened his senior staff. Faces were pale, hands jittering, voices taut with tension. Explain it, he demanded. Our scouts, our radar, our fighters, they were all in place. How could one aircraft do this? No answer came. The senior officers looked to one another, unable to reconcile the facts with their experience. The radar screens blinked inertly. Pilots' reports contradicted one another in minor details, yet all confirmed the same terrifying reality. A single P-61 had shattered their night fighting doctrine. The room fell into stunned silence, punctuated only by the crackle of radios, still filled with desperate transmissions from survivors attempting to regroup. Even the Japanese engineers, the meticulous minds behind aircraft development and radar technology, found themselves in disbelief. The Black Widow's performance, the precision of its attacks, the uncanny timing of each strike, it was beyond anything they had designed for, beyond the realm of possibility in existing aircraft theory. One senior engineer muttered, almost to himself, "It defies logic, speed, altitude, firepower. How could all of it converge in one plane?" The psychological effect extended far beyond the battlefield. Word of the night's events spread quickly through the Japanese ranks. Pilots whispered of the ghost plane, of a machine that appeared and vanished without warning, of a hunter that could strike 4 bombers in 70 minutes with surgical precision. The fear was palpable, a tension that lingered long after the last flare of fire had faded into the clouds. Morale was shaken. Confidence in night operations, once a cornerstone of their strategy, now faltered under the weight of impossibility. The command structure scrambled to respond. Orders were issued to increase patrols, to develop counter-strategies, to track this invisible threat. Yet nothing worked. Every interception attempt failed. Radar operators found gaps where none should exist. Pilots reported fleeting shadows, sudden bursts of fire, and an adversary that vanished before it could be engaged. Each encounter left more questions than answers, and each unanswered question deepened the psychological shock. Even the Japanese High Command, thousands of miles away in Tokyo, received reports of the attack. Communications officers tried to downplay the event, framing it as an anomaly, but the details could not be hidden. The narrative was extraordinary. One American night fighter, unseen, unstoppable, and lethally precise, had destroyed multiple bombers, leaving Japanese forces unable to respond, frozen in fear, and baffled by technology they could not comprehend. For those who survived the engagement, the phrase, Black Widow, became synonymous with terror. They described it as a demon of the night, a machine that defied all rules of engagement. Pilots vowed never to underestimate night operations again, engineers scrambled to understand radar blind spots, and commanders reevaluated every doctrine they had relied upon for years. In the skies above, the P-61 Black Widow had vanished into the clouds, its engines whispering only to its own crew. Below, the Japanese forces were left to grapple with a simple yet horrifying truth. One aircraft, unseen, had shattered their night fighting capabilities, demolished formations, and left a lasting impression of fear, disbelief, and awe. The psychological impact would endure far longer than the physical destruction. No one aboard the Japanese ships, no pilot in the sky, no engineer in the command centers could shake the image of that predator moving silently above them, precise, lethal, and unstoppable. The night had changed forever. The night had become a theater of unrelenting terror. The Black Widow, unseen, unstoppable, continued its patrol over the Mariana Islands, a predator weaving through clouds like a ghost of steel and shadow. Captain William Hardwick's hands remained steady on the controls, every flick of the throttle and rudder precise, as if guided by instinct rather than thought. Beside him, Lieutenant James Collier's eyes never left the radar screen, tracking blips that represented targets too late to evade. Reports from the surviving Japanese pilots filtered through the radio waves, trembling, fragmented, almost incomprehensible. "It appears, and disappears, kills instantly," one voice stammered. Another radio transmission cut through the static. "4 bombers gone, 1 plane." The panic was spreading like wildfire. The psychological devastation inflicted by the Black Widow now exceeded the physical. Every formation was suspect. Every mission was haunted by the shadow of a predator that seemed omnipresent, yet invisible. Hardwick's P-61 approached another cluster of Japanese bombers returning from reconnaissance missions along the island chain. These aircraft, smaller and less defended, were unaware that the legend of the Black Widow was no myth. It was real, and it was hunting them. The radar operator whispered, "2 more targets on our 6 o'clock, climbing fast." The Black Widow descended silently through the clouds. Its firepower, 420mm cannons and 4.50 caliber machine guns, was ready for precise strikes. The first bomber was immediately illuminated by tracer fire, engines erupting in flame as it spiraled downward. The crew inside could only scream in disbelief, gripping the controls as the invisible hunter claimed yet another victim. The second bomber attempted to flee, banking sharply, but the Black Widow anticipated the move. Collier guided Hardwick's maneuvers with surgical accuracy. A brief burst of cannon fire tore through the fuselage, and the aircraft plummeted in a cascade of fire. Japanese radar operators on nearby ships desperately tried to track the attacking plane, only to find gaps where none should exist. The P-61 was already gone, having moved on to the next target. At the Japanese command ship, Admiral Sato's unease had transformed into sheer panic. He pounded the desk with his fists, eyes darting between the radio reports and the radar screens. "Scramble fighters! Deploy night interceptors! Do something!" His voice carried authority, but no one could counter the sense of helplessness gripping the crew. The Black Widow's ghostly presence had exposed vulnerabilities in radar coverage, flight coordination, and tactical planning. Every measure they had relied upon was inadequate. Pilots whispered in disbelief about the Black Widow's apparent supernatural precision. Some swore they saw the plane hovering silently above clouds, only to vanish when they attempted to raise their sights. Others reported hearing the faint hum of engines and the crackle of guns in moments too fleeting to react. The psychological impact was complete. Fear had replaced training, hesitation had replaced confidence, and awe mingled with terror. Despite the chaos, the Black Widow's crew remained methodical. Hardwick engaged another bomber, executing a steep banking maneuver that placed him directly in the enemy's blind spot. Collier guided the radar with unwavering precision, calculating distance, speed, and trajectory in seconds. A single burst from the 20mm cannons tore through the bomber's fuselage. Flames and debris traced the descent, and the crew's frantic struggle to regain control was futile. The P-61 moved on before they could comprehend the attack. Back on the command ship, engineers and radar technicians were scrambling frantically. Calculations, projections, and schematics were useless against an aircraft that defied conventional limits. "We've never seen anything like this," one engineer admitted, shaking his head. "Its speed, its precision, its ability to vanish and reappear, it's not possible with known technology." Another muttered, "It's as if the plane anticipates our every move before we even make it." The psychological toll extended to every echelon of Japanese defense. Pilots who survived the initial attacks refused to fly additional sorties, haunted by the specter of the Black Widow. Radar crews, still trying to interpret the failed readings, whispered of phantom blips and impossible trajectories. Officers debated adjustments to strategy, but the very concept of night bombing, once their strength, was now a liability. Fear dictated every decision. As the P-61 continued its patrol, more enemy aircraft were intercepted, each engagement executed with the same calm efficiency that had defined the earlier strikes. Bombers fell like falling stars, their crews helpless, their formation integrity shattered. To observers on the ground and at sea, it seemed as though one aircraft had multiplied, striking simultaneously in multiple locations. The Black Widow's combination of stealth, radar guidance, speed, and firepower created a level of operational shock that no human opponent could match. Even the surviving Japanese pilots began to whisper of the Black Widow as a demon of the night, a machine that existed outside normal rules of engagement. Fear replaced routine, or replaced understanding. Commanders, engineers, and operators all struggled with the same question: how could one aircraft dominate an entire theater of operations so thoroughly, so efficiently, and so invisibly? Hours passed, and the Black Widow maintained a relentless presence. 4 bombers down in 70 minutes had already shocked the enemy, but now it seemed the aircraft could strike with impunity across the island chain. The combination of human skill and technological advantage was overwhelming, leaving Japanese forces frozen, scrambling, and horrified. Above it all, Hardwick and Collier remained composed, executing maneuvers with precision, observing destruction without exhilaration, aware that the mission was as much about psychological dominance as physical destruction. Every engagement reinforced the terrifying truth: a single P-61, expertly flown, could achieve what entire squadrons had failed to do. The Japanese had faced skilled pilots before, but none capable of this methodical, almost predatory efficiency. The night stretched onward, and the Black Widow's legend solidified in real time. Pilots, engineers, and commanders alike would recount the events for years to come, unable to shake the sense of awe and fear. One plane, operating in silence, had reshaped the battlefield, forced a reevaluation of tactics, and demonstrated a level of lethal efficiency that few could imagine. Every survivor carried the memory of that night: the hum of the engines, the flash of fire, the sudden disappearance of the attacker. By the time the Black Widow finally withdrew into the darkness, the Japanese forces were left not just physically diminished, but psychologically scarred. Confidence had been shattered. Doctrine had been questioned. And the legend of the aircraft, the single plane that struck with unerring precision, taking down 4 bombers in 70 minutes, was now etched into history. The first light of dawn barely penetrated the lingering haze over the Mariana Islands. Smoke from the destroyed bombers curled lazily above the ocean, drifting into the pale morning sky, a stark reminder of the night's devastation. The P-61 Black Widow, silent and unseen, had vanished into the clouds hours earlier, leaving behind a battlefield transformed not just physically, but psychologically. The legend of one aircraft's near-mythical performance was already spreading among survivors, commanders, and engineers alike. Captain William Hardwick and Lieutenant James Collier finally allowed themselves a moment to exhale, surveying the calm after the storm. The mission's numbers were staggering: 4 bombers destroyed in 70 minutes, each engagement executed with surgical precision, each maneuver flawless. Yet what weighed heaviest on the crew was not the tally of destroyed aircraft, but the profound effect their actions had on the enemy. The Japanese forces, still scrambling from the psychological shock, struggled to reconcile reality with their understanding of war. Radar operators, previously confident in their instruments, were left questioning their own eyes. It disappears," muttered one technician, staring at the blank scope that had failed so catastrophically. Engineers, attempting to rationalize the destruction, pored over schematics, calculations, and models, only to find that the P-61's combination of radar, speed, and firepower defied all expectations. Their reports described a plane that moved faster than perceived, struck with impossible accuracy, and vanished before interception. Pilots who had survived the attacks shared hushed conversations filled with disbelief and terror. "It's like a ghost," one whispered. "A demon that hunts silently, waits patiently, and strikes without warning." Another echoed the sentiment. "One plane, and it changed everything. Our formations, our tactics, our entire night strategy, it's useless against that." Fear and awe had replaced confidence, leaving crews hesitant to fly night missions for weeks. The Black Widow had not merely destroyed aircraft, it had shattered belief in what was possible. Admiral Kenji Sato, along with his staff, convened an emergency council. The reports, already sensational, grew more dire with every retelling. "A single plane took out 4 bombers in 70 minutes. 4. And our interceptors could not locate it. No formation, no radar coverage, no evasive tactic prevented it," he said, his voice tight with frustration and fear. Discussions became arguments, and arguments descended into silence. For the first time, the Japanese command acknowledged a terrifying reality: technology and tactics were no match for innovation, precision, and courage in combination. Word of the event spread rapidly throughout the Pacific theater. Pilots, engineers, and commanders in distant bases all whispered about the Black Widow. A plane whose capabilities seemed unreal. Intelligence reports and debriefs described the same chilling effect on the enemy: shock, horror, and disbelief in equal measure. Stories of one aircraft hunting multiple bombers, appearing and vanishing like a shadow, became legendary. Even those far removed from the battle sensed the psychological weight of the event. For Hardwick and Collier, the mission became a quiet triumph. They had flown with precision, relying on training, skill, and the remarkable technology of the P-61. Yet there was no celebration, only the knowledge that their actions had achieved something extraordinary. They had not only completed a mission, they had rewritten the rules of night combat. A single aircraft, properly employed, had proven capable of reshaping the battlefield. Historians would later describe the P-61's performance that night as unbelievable, noting its unprecedented ability to engage multiple targets with unerring accuracy, while evading detection and retaliation. Japanese officers, radar crews, and pilots would carry the memory of the Black Widow into every subsequent engagement, haunted by the impossibility of its precision. For decades, reports would surface detailing similar missions, each describing enemy forces frozen in shock, unable to comprehend how one plane could achieve so much in so little time. The legacy of the mission endured not only in the destroyed bombers but in the psyche of those who faced it. Confidence in night bombing operations had been shaken. Commanders now accounted for an enemy they could not always see, and radar operators studied gaps they had previously ignored. Pilots trained with a new respect for night fighters, aware that a single skilled aircraft could devastate even a superior formation. Fear and respect merged into a new doctrine, emphasizing caution, unpredictability, and vigilance against unseen threats. For Hardwick and Collier, the P-61 Black Widow remained a silent companion in memory, a machine that had transcended its role as an aircraft to become a symbol of precision, stealth, and lethality. Each time they recounted the mission, they emphasized the psychological component, the terror in the enemy's eyes, the frozen commands, the futile scramble of radar operators. The mission's impact extended far beyond the tally of bombers destroyed. It was a lesson in the power of innovation, skill, and the courage to strike decisively when opportunity presents itself. As dawn broke fully over the Mariana Islands, the ocean reflected the first rays of light on a scene forever altered by the events of the night. Smoke drifted from the downed bombers, and survivors huddled on their ships and in distant airfields, recounting the impossible. The legend of one P-61 hunting 4 bombers in 70 minutes spread through whispers and reports, inspiring awe and caution in equal measure. In history's eyes, the night had been transformed. One aircraft, moving with ghostly precision, had redefined what was possible in aerial warfare. Its presence forced enemies to confront limitations they had never imagined, reshaped strategies, and inspired legends that would endure long after the engines had fallen silent. The Black Widow had not just fought a battle, it had changed the nature of night combat forever.